Have you ever wondered why so many men feel irresistibly drawn to women who refuse the script of docility, submission, or predictability? Why, when confronted with a woman who sets boundaries and refuses to apologize for her intensity, they don't simply grow interested, they become captivated? Perhaps the answer lies not in her attitude itself, but in what that attitude awakens within them. Carl Jung once suggested that everything which fascinates us in another person is a mirror of what our own soul longs to integrate. In this light, what men often see in so-called bad women is not defiance for its own sake, but the reflection of a freedom they themselves never learned to cultivate. But what truly defines a bad woman? Is she the one who manipulates, deceives, or wounds? Or is she simply the one who dares to live whole, unapologetically herself, even when that unsettles others? For centuries, society has crowned the ideal woman as the one who pleases, waits, and adapts. Yet, time and again, there emerges an almost inexplicable fascination with those who break that mold. And it is not because they are bad. It is because they are free. And freedom, for many men, is an uncharted, terrifying, and irresistible territory. A woman who refuses to bow down becomes more than herself. She becomes a mirror, reflecting the fragility of those who once believed they needed to dominate in order to feel strong. That is the moment when the game shifts. The man suddenly finds himself before an archetype that unsettles his ego. A woman who does not depend on him, who does not seek his validation, who is unafraid to walk away. And the harder he tries to mold her into his expectations, the more she escapes him, slipping through his grasp like fine sand. But this is no game. It is a symbolic dance between power and vulnerability, between desire and fear, between the old model of masculinity and the new awareness struggling to emerge. Jung would call it a confrontation with the shadow, the moment a man is forced to face the parts of himself he never wished to see. And this is why he returns. Even when he swears he will not. Even when he tries to replace her, erase her, forget her. Because what he felt in her presence was not merely passion, it was confrontation. It was awakening. It was an unspoken invitation to grow, to shed the boy and step into the man. That is what terrifies him. And yet, that is also what draws him back. The bad woman is not bad at all. She is a mirror, a boundary, a compass. She signals the collapse of an ego that can no longer sustain itself, and the birth of a man he does not yet know how to become. So if you've ever been called difficult, cold, or too intense, remember this. Perhaps you were simply the first woman to show him that love is not submission, it is revolution. And even if he never admits it aloud, his body, his gaze, and his inevitable returns will always betray the truth. For a woman who awakens a man is unforgettable. She leaves an imprint on the soul, becoming the fracture line between who he once was and who he might at last be ready to become. Everything begins in that subtle moment, when a woman refuses to shrink herself to fit inside a man's narrow emotional world. To the outside eye it may seem invisible, but within the male's psyche it sets off an earthquake. Jung taught that the soul is shaped through confrontation with what we most resist. For many men, that confrontation takes the form of the woman who will not submit. She is the living embodiment of the shadow, the archetype that strips away the masks of pride, authority, and control. When a woman says no, with quiet firmness, when she demands respect without raising her voice, when she disappears without spectacle, but with dignity, something breaks open inside the man, and what shatters is not desire, it is illusion. He discovers that he has no power over her. And that realization, though painful, becomes irresistibly fascinating. For in that moment, he is no longer confronting a woman, he is confronting himself. Or, more precisely, the part of himself he never had the courage to face, his own emotional limitation. Such a woman does not scream, yet she echoes. She does not beg, yet she transforms. She does not seek revenge, yet she awakens. And this is why her influence lingers long after her presence is gone. Her absence speaks louder than words. When she walks away, she does not simply take her body, she takes the mirror. And without that reflection, he feels adrift, without direction. Jung reminded us that true love is not the one that fills you, but the one that exposes you. By exposing the raw truth of an emotionally unformed man, this kind of woman becomes, without intending, to the starting point of a new consciousness. Yet such a connection is never easy to recognize. Many women wonder, why does he approach me with such intensity, only to retreat as if frightened of me? The answer lies not in rejection, but in the fear of transformation itself. To love a free woman, a man must renounce domination, inflated ego, and the hunger for control. He must dismantle himself, and that is painful. That is why he runs, why he denies, why he tries to replace her. Yet nothing ever fills the space she once held. Because what she gave him was never just a romance. It was a revelation. It was in the collision of his ego with her essence that an emotional journey began, a journey few men have the courage to follow through to its end. But those who do are never the same again. And even if they never return, even if they never confess it, that woman will always remain the memory of who he might have become, had he chosen to grow. There is an invisible tension between what a man feels and what he is willing to face. When he encounters a woman who will not surrender, he is struck by a sensation he cannot name, a mixture of desire, frustration, and a quiet, searing rage. Not a rage directed at her, but at himself, for realizing that all his familiar tools of seduction, manipulation, and empty promises are powerless. Jung observed that the ego grows desperate when it cannot control what it desires. And that is precisely what happens here. The man longs for that woman with the intensity of possession, yet he collides with the impossibility of dominating her in that instant. The emotional game reaches its climax. Not as a battle between two people, but as a confrontation between his ego and her soul. She embodies everything he cannot grasp, yet cannot stop yearning for. Her independence unsettles him. Her calm unravels him. Her absence devastates him. And he cannot understand why. After all, she never begged, never humiliated herself, never pleaded for scraps of attention. So why does she disturb him so profoundly? The answer lies deep in the unconscious, where her image fuses with everything he has always feared would one day be exposed. Each time this woman sets a boundary, she creates tiny fractures in the emotional fortress he spent a lifetime constructing. Fractures that reveal the cracks in his learned fragility, in his performative masculinity, and in the roles the world demanded he play. Roles he once adopted as armor now failed to protect him. Instead, they imprison. And the greatest fear of a man who has not yet deconstructed himself is surrendering those defenses, becoming vulnerable before someone unmoved by his strength, someone who demands not power, but truth. The tension rises because, deep down, he knows he cannot deceive this woman. She sees him in full. She sees his excesses and his silences, his need for control, and the fragility he hides beneath indifference. And that terrifies him more than rejection itself, for she does not merely see the man he pretends to be. She reaches the man he has concealed. That silent unveiling is unbearable for an ego that has always needed domination to feel desirable. So he walks away. Not because he does not want her, but because he cannot endure what she reflects back to him. He would rather choose a woman who looks away, who accepts crumbs, who spares him from confronting his own naked truth. But this woman is different. She asks for nothing, yet her very presence demands everything, and that everything is precisely what he still does not know how to give, his soul. When the woman leaves, her silence becomes deafening. There are no messages, No reproaches, no threats. Only absence. Yet this absence is different, heavy, symbolic, unsettling. Jung taught that the unconscious reveals itself through symbols. And that is exactly what she becomes, a living symbol, an archetypal mirror reflecting everything he has spent a lifetime avoiding. She was never just a person. She was a breaking point. And now, in the echo of her absence, he begins, perhaps for the very first time, to truly think. Pride resists, inventing excuses, weaving rationalizations, feeding the story that she was the one who overreacted, who demanded too much, who was cold. But something inside him can no longer sustain that lie. Because deep down he knows, she asked for nothing more than presence. Nothing more than truth. Nothing more than a man capable of loving without the need to control. And so, every gesture of hers becomes a symbolic memory, the firmness of her gaze, the silence she kept when disrespected, the lightness with which she said goodbye. It all comes back, like fragments of a puzzle he tries to assemble too late. This reflection is not romantic, it is painful. Because what he sees now is not only what he lost, but what he never knew how to be. He realizes that instead of protecting her, he sought to dominate her. That instead of loving her with maturity, he tried to make her dependent on his instability. That instead of building something real, he played with power, and that realization corrodes him from within. She was the first woman who did not fall into that trap. She did not stay to be reformed. She left to preserve herself. In that precise moment, many men enter a crisis, for the ego can no longer uphold the illusion of emotional superiority. He sees that, instead of being strong, he was immature. That instead of being desirable, he was predictable. That instead of being brave, he was small. And that realization, when it is genuine, cracks the psychic armor, cracks through which light begins to enter. Jung taught that self-knowledge begins when we stop projecting blame onto others and start taking responsibility for our own shadows. And that is precisely what she triggered, a disruption in the cycle of projection. He begins to understand that she was not bad, she was just fair. She was not cold, she was firm. She was not difficult, she was whole. That kind of woman frightens only those who have not yet learned to look deeply at themselves. She does not seek a hero, a father, or an owner. She wants someone with the courage to walk beside her with a bare soul, a present heart, and truth in his eyes. And now he sees all of that, but he sees it alone. Every true transformation begins with loss. And there is no loss more profound than the one that forces someone to confront their own shadow. Jung taught that what we reject most in ourselves is what controls us most. When that man loses the woman who would not bend, the woman who confronted him with quiet gestures and unwavering presence, he begins to feel, on his own skin, what he has long avoided, the emptiness of his own emotional immaturity. It is not her absence that wounds him, it is what she unearthed within. And that pain marks the beginning of something new. Little by little, his defenses begin to crumble. Rage gives way to shame. Avoidance yields to longing. Pride softens into reflection. And where there once stood armor, now stands a man stripped of the illusions that once kept him safe, but distant from his own essence. The woman he called difficult was, in truth, the only one who saw beyond his facade. It is that gaze that begins to transform him, not because she tried to change him, but because she forced him to see himself. And truly seeing oneself is an experience that alters the soul forever. It is not a gentle process. The soul bleeds, the ego writhes, the mind struggles to return to old patterns, but it cannot. The experience of having encountered a whole woman sets a new internal standard. After her, all others seem pale. None silently demand that he rise. None so delicately expose the wounds he has hidden all his life. None reach so deep. That impact becomes a symbolic scar, a constant reminder that change is required. And so, the man begins to deconstruct himself. He stops seeking validation through applause and begins seeking meaning in silence. He abandons the desire to be desired and learns to desire only to be real. He does not grow weak, he becomes human. And it is there, in that humanness, that true strength is born. Jung said that there is no awakening without pain, and that individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, only unfolds when we face our own darkness. That woman was the spark that ignited this transformation. And even if she is far away, she remains present as a symbol of who he still has the potential to become. This transformation is not about winning her back. It is no longer about her. It is about him, about rebuilding himself on the foundation of truth rather than performance, about abandoning the need to impress and beginning to live in integration. It is about recognizing that love, when authentic, does not follow the ego's lead. True love, the kind that transcends, heals, and awakens, can only flourish when the mask falls and the authentic self finally emerges. After the fall of the ego, the world no longer appears the same. And neither does he. The man who once sought admiration now longs for connection. What he once perceived as a power game, he now understands as an invitation to vulnerability. He begins to realize that the woman who unsettled him was not arrogant, she was whole. It was not that she was too much, it was that he was emotionally insufficient. Jung taught that true healing begins only when we examine what hurt us with the eyes of learning. And that is exactly what is happening. She left a mark, not as a wound, but as a sign. This new man does not arrive with promises, he arrives with presence. He no longer seeks to be the answer, he is willing to listen to the questions. He understands that it is not enough to love, love must be anchored in maturity. He now knows that the woman who made him question everything does not want to be saved, conquered, or convinced. She wants to be respected in her depth, recognized in her truth, embraced in her strength. And that can only occur when a man relinquishes the need for superiority and chooses, with humility, to be real. This new vision is expressed not in grand words, but in silent deeds. He does not beg, he shows. He does not seduce, he supports. He does not display, he surrenders. Because he has finally understood that a true woman is not impressed by promises or power, but by a man's ability to remain whole beside her, even when everything in her confronts him. Respect is no longer a strategy, it has become essence. Admiration is no longer vanity, it has become recognition. And desire is no longer ego, it has become communion. He also understands that perhaps he has arrived too late, that this woman has already moved on, that she may not be willing to reopen the doors she had to close in order to preserve herself. And instead of stirring anger, this realization brings reverence, for he now sees the value she held and the price she paid for being the only one who saw the parts of him that remained blind. Jung said that not all encounters are meant to last, some exist only to awaken. And awakening alone is already a miracle. He does not wait for forgiveness. He does not demand a return. He does not idealize a reunion. He simply moves forward, with a clearer heart, a more honest soul, and silent gratitude for the woman who, without asking permission, entered, exposed, tore open, and left. Because sometimes that is precisely what love does. It destroys the false so that the true may be born. And now, for the first time, he is ready to love, perhaps not her, but himself. And only from that place can any other love be authentic. She became a milestone in his emotional timeline, not for the intensity of her words, but for the enduring strength of her silence. No matter how much time passes, no matter how many other bodies attempt to occupy that space, nothing can replace what she represented. Jung said that certain archetypes cannot be erased, only integrated. And she was exactly that, a living archetype, the embodiment of the woman who did not come to complete him, but to deconstruct him. She did not arrive to console, but to provoke. She did not come to fill the emptiness, but to reveal that it existed. He may try to forget, rationalize, or move on. He may dive into new stories, new voices, new presences, but none will ever be her. She was never a phase. She was a mirror. And mirrors that reveal our true selves are never forgotten, even when they cause pain, even when they strip us of vanity, superiority, and control. He knows the truth. The woman he once tried to tame was, in reality, the beginning of his liberation. And though it took time to understand, it finally made sense. She was not difficult, she was necessary. Her presence does not evoke nostalgia, it awakens awareness. When he hears a phrase she once said, when he feels an emptiness in his chest at the sound of her name, when he recognizes in someone else what he has never found again, he understands. Not all pain is loss. Some pain is seed she planted unknowingly, now blooming in the small decisions he makes, in the way he listens, in how he respects, in how he gives of himself. She was the last woman of the stage in which he was still asleep, and the first woman he saw with the eyes of awakening. He will never openly admit it, perhaps out of pride, perhaps out of respect, perhaps because he knows she no longer belongs to his present. Yet deep within, in the most intimate corner of his soul, where masks no longer reach, he keeps that truth like someone guarding a relic. She was not just a woman. She was a revelation, the embodiment of what he might have experienced had he been ready. And now that he is, he understands that some encounters are not meant to last, they are meant to leave a mark. The woman he once called bad was in truth simply authentic. And authenticity, when one is unprepared for it, is frightening. But once awakened, it transforms. And even if their paths never cross again, what she stirred within him will continue to resonate. There are women who pass through, and there are women who awaken. She was the awakening he had spent a lifetime pretending he did not need. Some encounters do not fade. They remain, not by force, but by depth, like footprints etched into the soul. They do not scream, but whisper across the days. And when silence falls, it is then that their traces become most visible. The woman once called bad was never the opposite of love. She was its portal, the one that demands courage to cross and humility to understand. She did not destroy the man she met. She revealed what within him was not yet true. And for that reason, even in silence, she continues to transform him. Within him now exists a new way of listening, a new gaze, a new sense of presence. He is no longer dazzled by games. He no longer gives himself to superficiality. He no longer hides behind masks, for by touching the edge of his own ego, he discovered the beginning of his soul. Jung said that a truly loving encounter occurs when two consciousnesses recognize each other. Perhaps she was the only one who saw him even before he knew himself. It was that mirror that awakened him. And awakening, no matter how painful, is never in vain. Some men will continue to run, to blame, to hide from themselves. But others, those who have the courage to look back honestly, will understand. They will realize that they did not lose a woman, but gained a rare opportunity, an opportunity to rebuild themselves from the inside out. From that which hurts, that which unsettles, that which challenges, and paradoxically, that which sets them free. Because there is no freedom without self-awareness, and there is no real love where the ego still reigns. That woman was a silent revolution. And true revolutions never ask permission to happen. So, if this video stirred something inside you that you could not name, but still felt, perhaps it is time to look within, to stop chasing others and start walking beside yourself, and only then, beside someone else. The kind of love that awakens us is not the one that comforts. it is the one that transforms. Sometimes, the person you judged as the obstacle in your path was actually the key you needed to unlock the door of your awareness. She was never your enemy. She was your initiator. If this message resonated with you, let it resonate beyond yourself. Like, comment, and share. Write here what you felt, because in your story, another woman may recognize herself, another man may awaken, and together we can build more conscious relationships. Subscribe to the channel if you wish to continue on this path of depth, truth, and transformation. And remember, the one who sees you with the eyes of the soul will never forget what they saw.